Welcome back to Algebra 1. This is lesson 10-2, solving inequalities. Okay? Now, we're going to start with some easy ones, and then we're going to look at the real gotcha in solving inequalities. Okay? Let's say we start with the inequality x minus 3 is greater than 4. Okay. Now, if this were an equality, it would be like so, all right? And the parallels between solving an equality and an inequality are very much there, very similar, okay? So over here, what we would do here is to undo the subtraction of 3 so we can find what x originally was. We'd put that 3 back by adding it to both sides, and we'd get x equals 7, okay? Well, as long as you're only doing addition, you're okay. So we're going to do the same thing over here to this inequality. We're going to undo the subtraction of 3 by adding 3 to both sides, and we get x is greater than 7. Okay? Now, we should check that. So think of our number line. Over here, let's say it's negative 7 right there. There's 0, and here's positive 7. Out here will be positive 10. Okay, so our answer says x is greater than 7. That means we put an open dot because it's not equal to 7, and we color this way. Now, let's pick something bigger than 7 just to make sure that it works. Say 10. Put in a 10 in our original inequality. Put a 10 in up here for x. And we get 10 minus 3, which is 7. 7 is greater than 4. Roger that, it works. Okay? So we've checked it. Now, if you really want to make sure that it's working, pick something that should not work, something that isn't in your solution set, like 0. Put a 0 in there. Let's see what happens. We put a 0 here for x. 0 minus 3, that's a negative 3, greater than 4. Ooh, negative 3 is not greater than 4, so it doesn't work, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't be part of our solution set because that's not what we found. Okay? So we checked it. Now, what if we had one like so? X plus 5 is less than 8. Okay? Now again, if this were an equality, to solve it, we need to undo the addition of 5. So we're going to subtract 5. As long as you're only adding or subtracting, no problem. Treat it just like it's an equality. Okay, so subtract 5. Subtract 5, we get x is less than 3. Well, let's pick a number less than 3 and check that our answer works. Let's say 0. 0 is less than 3. If I put a 0 in here, I get 0 plus 5 is 5. 5 is less than 8. It works. Okay? So far, when I'm adding or subtracting, I treat my inequality just like an equality. Okay? Now, let's look at multiplying and dividing now. What if we have 2x is greater than 10? Okay? Now, if this were an equality, I would divide both sides by 2. So let's do that. Okay, and I get x is greater than 5. Okay, x greater than 5. Well, let's try something greater than 5. Get rid of that. Let's say 6. 6 is greater than 5, so according to our solution here, 6 should work. 2 times 6, that's 12. 12 is greater than 10. Okay, we're all right. Okay. Now, let's try this one. Let's make that a negative number in front of the x. Okay. So now we have to divide both sides by negative 2. okay, which is what we would do if it were an equality, right? Negative 2 divided by negative 2, that gives me just my x here. And over here I get a negative 5. Now, on your number line, there's my 0, negative 5, negative 10 out there, 5 here, 10 here. It says x is greater than negative 5, according to what we've solved so far. That would mean that our solution, according to what we've done, should go like that. Right? Well, let's try it. Let's pick something greater than negative 5. 0 is an easy one, or 5 or 10. Let's try 0. Let's put 0 into our original inequality up there and make sure that it works. Put a 0 here. Negative 2 times 0, that's 0. Oh my goodness. 0 is not greater than 10. Okay? So this is one of the gotchas with inequalities. Okay? Whenever you divide or multiply, multiplying and dividing only, by a negative number, okay? By a negative number, you have to reverse the sign of the inequality. Okay, so I tell my guys to remember it by saying multiplying and dividing. That looks like a doctor name, right? Medical, MD. And it has to be a bad doctor. It has to be a negative number that you're working with. So the bad doctor, right, the mad scientist, the bad doctor comes in, and when you divide or multiply by a negative number, which is what we did here, okay, not only do you do the calculation, but you have to take the sign and you flip the sign the other way. Yeah, you have to change the sign. It has to go the other way. So that would mean our answer would go this way. Okay, now let's check it and make sure that works. Let's take negative 10 and put negative 10 in up here. Okay, if I put in negative 10, I get negative 2 times negative 10 is positive 20. And that is greater than positive 10, so it works. All right? Now, this is a real gotcha. You must always check your answers here. I watched a very good math teacher, okay? And I don't know where that person is nowadays, but I watched a very good math teacher make this mistake twice. You know, when he was teaching a class twice in that same classroom. Easy to make this mistake, okay? Now, let's do a real simple one just to show you why that happens. Not even with an equation. So if you forget, you can always check it. Right? What if you had 10 is less than 20? That's a true statement, right? Nothing hard about that. No variables, nothing there. Okay, let's multiply both sides by negative 2. So we're going to come over here and multiply by negative 2, and we're going to come over here and we're going to multiply by negative 2. Now watch what happens. Negative 2 times positive 10 is negative 20. Negative 2 times positive 20 is negative 40. Oh, and this is much more in the hole. This is a lot less. Okay, you owe a lot more money if you're negative 40 than if you're only negative 20. So this is the bigger number. Watch what happened to the sign. The sign flipped. Okay? So that's a multiply. Now let's look at, let's look at a multiply instead of a divide. What if we had this one? Okay. Now, if it were an equality, we would multiply both sides by negative 2. All right, so let's do that. Negative 2 here, negative 2 here. We're going to multiply. We get, these will cancel. 1, 1, so we're just left with our x. Over here, we get negative 6, and we multiplied, right, of our MD, we multiplied by a negative number, so bad doctor here. We have to flip our sign, okay? And now let's check that actually works. X has to be greater than negative 6. Well, 10 is greater than negative 6. Let's try 10. Let's take 10, go back to our original inequality. Let's plug 10 in and see if we get a correct answer. Let's see, 10 divided by negative 2 is going to be negative 5. And is negative 5 less than 3? Yes, it is. Okay? So always remember the bad doctor here. When you multiply or divide by a negative, it's a positive number, you don't have to worry about it. Okay? And if you're just adding or subtracting, you don't have to worry about anything. But if it's multiplying and or dividing by a negative number, then you have to flip the sign. Okay? All right, and that is the gotcha. That's pretty much what there is in lesson 10-2.